Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're diving into something that's probably part of your everyday life,
Mm.
social media and, how it really impacts our mental health.
Yeah.
I mean, chances are you've glanced at a feed already today, maybe even just now. It's just
Yeah.
everywhere. It connects us, sure, but it also brings up some big questions.
Absolutely. It's this double-edged sword, isn't it? The material we're looking at from Mind Talk, it really digs into that complex relationship. Beyond just connection, there are some real potential downsides. We
Yeah,
want to kind of pull out the main insights from their work, get a clearer picture of what's actually going on.
and Mind Talk really went wide, didn't they? They looked at everything from like why these apps feel so sticky, so addictive,
Right.
to the actual links with anxiety, even depression.
Yeah.
But importantly, they also covered the good stuff, the positives, and some solid advice on how to manage it all a bit better.
Exactly. So our aim here is to unpack the most crucial bits for you.
Okay, so let's start with just how massive this whole thing has become, how it's woven into, well, everything.
Right. Think about the big players: Facebook, Instagram, X, what used to be Twitter,
Hmm.
TikTok. These aren't just websites anymore. They've fundamentally changed how we communicate,
Yeah.
how we interact.
Totally reshaped things. And the amount of time, Mind Talk had this stat, didn't they? The average user spends, what, over 2 hours a day scrolling?
Yeah, over 2 hours when you actually stop and think about that.
It's huge.
It really is. That's a significant chunk of your waking life. Often, like you said, it's the first thing you check in the morning, last thing at night.
Hmm.
And Mind Talk really explored this idea that this constant plugging in, it might have this kind of hidden cost for our mental well-being, how our minds are being subtly shaped by what we see online.
Yeah, that hidden cost.
Yeah,
Because what we're seeing isn't always, well, real life, is it? It's curated.
exactly. Mind Talk used the term highlight reel, which is perfect.
Mm.
People naturally share the good stuff, the holidays, the achievements, the, perfect family photos, the struggles, the mundane stuff that usually gets left out.
And seeing only those highlights constantly, Mind Talk really dug into how that sets up this comparison trap.
Psychologically, it's called social comparison. And as they pointed out, you start looking at these idealized posts, and it's easy to feel like, wow, everyone else has got it figured out.
Right, everyone's thriving except
Right.
me, when in reality, they're probably dealing with their own challenges off screen.
Precisely. And this constant comparing, Mind Talk reference studies showing it really can chip away at your self-esteem. It can lead to feeling inadequate, kind of down, and yeah, it can even be a factor in developing depressive feelings.
It's quite corrosive, that comparison culture.
It really can be, and it affects different people differently, but Mind Talk stressed the impact on younger people, teenagers, even
Oh
preteens.
yeah, how so?
Well, for them, their sense of self, who they are, can get really tangled up with online validation. How many likes they get, followers, comments, that stuff can feel incredibly important.
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. So if that validation isn't there,
Then, yeah, Mind Talk described how it can feed anxiety, stress, even trigger real identity questions as they try to navigate who they are online versus offline. It's complex.
okay, so there's the comparison side, but then there's also how these platforms are actually built, right? To keep us hooked.
Exactly. Mind Talk got into the neuroscience a bit. They explained how these platforms are often designed, quite intentionally, to tap into our brain's reward circuitry, specifically dopamine.
Ah, dopamine, the feel-good chemical. How does that work with social media?
Well, as Mind Talk laid it out, every time you get a notification, a like, a comment, a share, your brain gets a little hit of dopamine. It feels good, it's
Like that
rewarding.
little treat.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, it's unpredictable. Mind Talk used the analogy of a slot machine. You pull the lever, you don't know if you'll win, but the possibility keeps you pulling.
So you keep checking your phone, refreshing the feed, hoping for that next little dopamine hit, that next notification win.
Right. And this constant cycle, this repeated stimulation, Mind Talk suggested it might actually, over time, start to subtly change how our brains work. Things like our attention span, maybe making us a bit more impulsive, even affecting how we regulate our emotions.
Hmm, like training our brains for constant short bursts of reward.
Kind of. And that's why, as Mind Talk pointed out, you might feel that little buzz of anxiety, that restlessness when you can't check your phone. It's partly that trained expectation of the next dopamine hit.
Okay, that makes sense. And speaking of anxiety, Mind Talk found a pretty clear correlation there, didn't they? Between heavy social media use and anxiety disorders.
They did. It seems the more time people spend, particularly in certain ways, the higher the likelihood of experiencing anxiety.
And they mentioned specific behaviors like doom scrolling.
Yeah, doom scrolling. That's, when you just keep scrolling and scrolling through negative news, bad updates, worrying posts.
Oh, I know that feeling. You can't look away, even though it makes you feel awful.
Exactly. And Mind Talk explained how constantly feeding your brain that kind of negative input can, understandably, ramp up your overall anxiety levels. Your brain's threat detection system is just constantly activated.
And then there's the other side. FOMO, fear of missing out.
Ah, yes, FOMO. Seeing posts of parties you weren't invited to, amazing trips others are on. Mind Talk highlighted how that can easily trigger feelings of inadequacy, like your life isn't as exciting or fulfilling.
It makes you feel like you should be doing more, being more places.
Mm-hmm. And FOMO isn't just a passive feeling, as Mind Talk elaborated. It can actually drive behavior, like feeling you have to go to things just so you can post about them, or compulsively checking your phone so you don't miss any updates.
Prioritizing the online version of life over the real one, sometimes.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Mind Talk touched on this. These tools designed for connection can end up making people feel more isolated in their actual lives, surrounded by digital noise, but disconnected from deeper relationships.
That feeling of being alone in a crowded digital room.
Something like that. And this ties into depression, too. Mind Talk presented evidence showing a link, particularly for young adults, between higher social media use and increased rates of depression.
And it's not just the FOMO and comparison causing that, right? There's more to it.
Definitely. Mind Talk also pointed to things like exposure to online negativity, cyberbullying, trolling, harassment, and those relentless, often totally unrealistic body image standards that are just everywhere on platforms like Instagram.
Right, that constant exposure can be really damaging.
It can. And add to that the pressure Mind Talk mentioned. The pressure to maintain your own perfect online image, that can be exhausting.
Like you're performing all the time.
Exactly. They described it almost like living two lives, the real you and the curated online you. And that effort, that constant performance, leads to what they called social media fatigue.
Just burnout.
Yeah.
Emotional exhaustion from being always on.
Yeah. You're tired, you feel drained by it all. But here's the tricky part Mind Talk highlighted. Even when you know it's making you feel bad, it can be really hard to step away.
That dopamine loop pulling you back in.
Right. It creates this difficult cycle. Like, you feel bad, but you feel compelled to keep checking, which might make you feel worse, but you still can't stop. It's a real challenge.
And it doesn't just affect our waking hours, does it? Mind Talk talked about sleep, too.
Oh, definitely. Late night scrolling is a big one. How often do we tell ourselves just 5 more minutes and suddenly it's an hour later?
Guilty as charged.
We all do it. But Mind Talk explained the impact. Firstly, the blue light from our screens can actually suppress melatonin production. That's the hormone that tells your body it's time to sleep.
So it physically messes with your sleep signals.
It can, yeah.
Huh.
And secondly, the content itself, even if it's not negative, is often mentally stimulating. It keeps your brain buzzing when it should be winding down for rest.
And we know poor sleep is bad news for mental health generally. Mind Talk linked it back to depression and anxiety risks, too.
Absolutely, it's all connected. Poor sleep makes you more vulnerable to stress, harder to regulate emotions, so that late-night scrolling habit can have real knock-on effects the next day and the day after.
So it's not just what you look at, but when.
Exactly. Mind Talk made that clear. Even relaxing content right before bed can still disrupt the process.
Okay, wow. So we've covered a lot of the potential negatives, the risks.
Yeah.
But it's not all bad, is it? Mind Talk made sure to balance the picture.
No, absolutely not. That's crucial. Social media can be a powerful force for good. Mind Talk highlighted its role in connection, especially for people who might be geographically isolated or, have niche interests and find their community online.
Maintaining those long-distance friendships and family ties.
Right. And think about awareness campaigns, social activism, access to information and education. Mind Talk pointed out how it gives a platform, a voice to people and causes that might otherwise be overlooked. Sharing creativity, finding support groups.
Yeah, finding your tribe, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And Mind Talk specifically mentioned the pandemic. For many people, social media was a genuine lifeline during lockdowns, offering connection, support, shared experience, even just some much-needed humor when things felt really tough and isolating.
That's a really important point. It provided a form of community when physical community wasn't possible.
It really did. So as Mind Talk concluded, it really boils down to how we use it. The tool itself isn't inherently good or bad. It's about our relationship with it. Mindful consumption is key.
Okay, so that brings us to the solutions part. If we know the risks, what can we actually do about it? How can we use it more healthily? Mind Talk had some practical tips, right?
They did. Really useful stuff. It starts, they suggested, with being more intentional.
Intentional. How so?
Just asking yourself why you're picking up your phone to open that app. Is there a specific purpose? Are you looking for information, connecting with a friend? Or is it just mindless habit, boredom, trying to avoid a feeling?
Huh. Just pausing to ask why. That's simple, but probably quite revealing.
It can be. Mind Talk also recommended practical things like setting time limits using those app timers on your phone. And, crucially, turning off unnecessary notifications. Those little pings and buzzes are designed to pull you back in constantly.
Get rid of the constant interruptions. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about the content itself?
Yeah, actively curating your feed. Mind Talks stress this. Make a conscious choice to follow accounts that make you feel good, inspired, informed in a healthy way.
And unfollow the ones that don't.
Exactly. Unfollow or mute accounts that consistently make you feel bad, envious, or inadequate. Take control of what you're letting into your headspace.
Be the gatekeeper of your own feed.
Pretty much. And another big suggestion from Mind Talk was the idea of digital detoxes.
Taking breaks entirely.
Yeah, even short ones. An evening off, a phone-free weekend morning, maybe a whole day if you can manage it. Just giving your brain a rest from the constant input can be incredibly restorative.
Recharge the mental batteries.
And finally, Mind Talk really emphasized replacing some of that screen time with offline activities, things that genuinely nourish you.
Like what?
You know, the simple things sometimes. Reading a book, going for a walk outside, journaling, spending quality time, actually present, face-to-face time with people you care about. Hobbies, anything that grounds you in the real world.
So stepping away from the digital to reconnect with the physical.
That's the idea.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the big message from Mind Talk, as we've discussed, seems to be that social media is this really powerful tool. It can be great, it can be harmful, and it mostly depends on us, on how we choose to engage with it.
Exactly. It hinges on our awareness, our choices, our intentionality.
And it suggests we need to be more conscious, maybe kinder online, kinder to ourselves by not falling into comparison traps and managing our exposure, and kinder to others in how we interact, remembering there's a real person behind that screen. Ultimately, Mind Talk seemed to say our mental health needs to come first, before the likes, before the perfect feed.
Well said. And maybe, taking a leaf out of the Mind Talk host's book, we could all maybe challenge ourselves a little.
Like a takeaway action.
Yeah. Just one small step towards better digital well-being this week. Maybe it is trying a mini detox for a few hours. Or maybe just paying closer attention to how you feel when you scroll through different apps, just building that awareness.
I like that. A small, achievable step. So maybe for everyone listening, just take a moment later today to think about your own habits, what's working for you with social media. Where could you maybe tweak things to feel a bit better, a bit more balanced?
Yeah, it's about finding what works for you, that healthier relationship.
And one final thought, something Mind Talk also stressed. If this stuff feels overwhelming, if your relationship with social media or your mental health in general is really getting you down,
Yeah.
reaching out for help is okay. It's actually a sign of strength. Talk to someone you trust, a friend, family, or a professional. There are resources out there.
That's such an important final point. Don't struggle alone.